and that's just for people who can't join us this evening. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Laura Piercy. I'm one of the Associate Directors of the SWAP, and I'm also one of the Pathways and Progress Leaders at Ackland Burley School. My particular area of experience is with UCAS and higher education applications, and I am the UCAS coordinator at Burley, but I do quite a bit of stuff to do with UCAS all the way across the consortium. So this evening we are focusing on early applications, Oxbridge in particular, and I'm just going to talk through some of the bits around the application, some of the things that make it different to a standard university application, what students can do this year in order to prepare for the application. And at the end, there will be time for some questions if you would like to ask any questions. If you've got any questions throughout the presentation, please just pop them in the chat, and then I will be able to see them at the end, and I will answer anything that pops up in there. But I'm going to go through the presentation first, and then I will answer any questions. So, what is early entry then? I'm going to start from the very, very basics, just to assume that people I'm going to assume that people don't know anything and start from there and work through. So apologies if some of you are already up to speed with this. But early entry in today covers Oxford and Cambridge. When we say early entry, we talk about early entry in terms of UCAS, university applications. What we often mean is Oxford, Cambridge, medicine, dentistry, and veterinary courses. And very simply, they're called early entry because they have an earlier deadline than the standard UCAS and university deadline. So these courses, all courses at Oxford and Cambridge, regardless of the subject, and then courses in medicine, dentistry, and veterinary at any university, they all have deadlines of around the 15th of October each year. This year it was the 16th because the 15th fell on a Sunday. And that is the 15th of October of year 13. So this is why, one of the reasons why we start talking about these early entry courses, so what feels like so early in year 12, because when students come back after the summer break in year 12, they've only got around 5 weeks usually to get those applications off. So it is quite a quick turnaround. So we start talking about them earlier. Preparation for those applications starts earlier in the year. The deadline for all other courses, so anything else, any university that's not Oxford or Cambridge, and anything that's not the 3 medicine adjacent courses, those deadlines is currently the last Wednesday of January. So early entry is October, and then January of year 13 is the deadline for all those other courses. So as you can see, it is quite a big difference, quite an earlier deadline. So why is it so early? The reason it is so early is for 2 reasons, really. Firstly, because Oxford and Cambridge and the other courses get so many applications, they just need more time to go through them. And secondly, because Oxbridge and the medicine adjacent courses tend to interview, or they do interview, the majority of the students that they are considering for places, and that interview process takes time. That's why they can't have the same deadline as the other university courses, because then they would only have from the end of January until March to make those offers. At the minute, they've got from October until March to make the offers. I'm just going to start, before I start talking about the process, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of what Oxbridge is actually like, hopefully to address some myths about it, probably to confirm some other thoughts. It is in a lot of cases how you would assume it is. There is hard academic work expected all the time, and which can't be a surprise to anyone. They are in the top 3 universities in the country every single year alongside St Andrews in Scotland, and they are considered to be amongst the best universities in the world. It is not a surprise that they are. It is that hard work is expected. The schedules at both Oxford and Cambridge are very, very packed. Regardless of the subject, there will tend to be heavy schedules of tutorials, seminars, lectures, and labs. And there will be small group or even one-to-one tutorials every week. That is different to a lot of universities. Obviously, lots of universities have heavy schedules. Lots of them have seminars, and lots of them have tutorials. But at Oxford and Cambridge, the ratio of staff to students is higher than most universities, and the contact time between staff and students is higher than most universities. Obviously, that's a really good thing in a lot of ways. You get access to a lot of staff expertise. It does mean that there is nowhere to hide in a lot of senses. There are big lectures, but there are also these very small tutorials where you have to be able, as a student, to speak up and to engage and to take part. One of the, I suppose, controversial things about Oxbridge is that there is no paid work allowed during term time. They don't allow students to take paid jobs, and that is because of the weight of these schedules of tutorial seminars and whatnot. Now, one of the ways they counter the issue with this is that there are a lot of bursaries and scholarships available at Oxford and Cambridge. They have loads of money, and they are pretty good at giving it away. There are several bursaries and scholarships available for students at different levels. If your household is a household that has an income of under £25,000 a year, then there are pretty substantial bursaries available. But bursaries available for households that go all the way up to about 45 or £50,000 a year. So there are bursaries and scholarships available for a range of students. And there are also separate ones available for students from particular groups, particular widening participation groups. We do talk about this a lot with students as the process starts in more detail. So I'm not going to go into them all tonight, but students are made aware of these. They can be seen as quite insular. One good way of looking at it is that there is a very, very tight community in most Oxbridge colleges, but it can be seen as, as I say, as quite insular. And linked to this is that there are a lot of things done for you if you live on site, if you live at the college. So most colleges are catered. You will have a porter. There is quite a close-knit kind of college atmosphere. So that is great for some students, not so great for others. There is an emphasis on tradition in most, but not all colleges. I will talk about colleges briefly in this presentation. Some of them are very old-fashioned, again, as you'd expect. Some of them are much more modern and don't have the same kind of look or feel as you might expect from that kind of Hogwartsy Oxbridge image that it's got. But a lot of the colleges are quite traditional, and of course, the content of the courses themselves also tends to be to lean that way. You do have access to the most amazing libraries and resources. They really are incredible and definitely amongst the best in the country, if not the world. You will take part in exceptional networking that will last a lifetime. And students are working with some of the best lecturers and academics, as I say, in the world. It is a very unique experience. And because of that, and I'll emphasize this a few times this evening, it is really important that where they can, students go and visit. Because some students walk in and they see it and they go, this is amazing, I don't want to go anywhere else. And some students get there and go, this is absolutely not for me. Both of those are obviously completely legitimate. It is, it is its own experience. It is really worth going and seeing what it's like where possible. We always take a trip, usually to Cambridge, just because we have links with Girton College at Cambridge in the summer. But it is quite limited. We can usually only take about 25 students. So that's from across the swap. So if they have another opportunity to go, it is really, really worth going. So just a few facts. You can only apply to Oxford or Cambridge. You can never, ever apply to both in the same year. And you can only apply for one course at either Oxford or Cambridge. Your other choices, so on UCAS, you get to make up to 5 choices. The other 4 choices must be at another university. These are really the only universities that have these rules. You can apply for 5 courses at Durham, you can apply for 5 courses at Edinburgh, but Oxford and Cambridge you can't. And again, it's because it comes back to this this lengthy interview process that there just isn't the time to interview a student for the 3, 4, 5 different courses. So you have a really important decision to make. It is one course at one of the unis. That is per year. So if, for example, you applied in year 13 and you didn't get in, then if you chose to apply again the year after, then you can of course apply again. Key differences then between Oxford and Cambridge. Like, we always talk about them together. We even have this portmanteau word that we talk about them together all the time. What actually are the differences? Well, in many ways, not an awful lot. They are very similar in terms of reputation. If you are interested in league tables, which have positive and negatives to them, but they tend to switch around between 1 and 2, or in the top 3 it is now with St Andrews year on year. So they're very, very similar in terms of reputation. The teaching style is really similar. The college system is almost identical. So the main thing for students to do is to look at the course outlines themselves, because the unis themselves, there's not a huge amount of difference. If I'm speaking very generally, Cambridge courses are broader, especially in the first year. They tend to start a bit broader and then specialise, whereas Oxford start more specialised from the beginning. But again, that varies subject by subject. That is just generally speaking. Look at colleges, look at accommodation, look at the city. Where would you rather live? Again, there are a lot of similarities between Oxford and Cambridge, but they are different cities. But the course content should be the student's primary focus. When you are looking at choosing a course, what are the modules? How is it assessed? What are you going to learn? It is important to know that they don't offer exactly the same subjects. So, for example, only Cambridge does architecture, only Oxford offers art. So, if you are picking one of the subjects that are only done at one of the unis, then of course you can only apply there. And this is a particularly important distinction to make for scientists and with science. So the key thing here is that Oxford offers individual subjects as separate degrees, so biology, chemistry, physics, whereas Cambridge offers natural sciences. And natural sciences is more like triple science. So in year 1, you choose 3 science modules and a maths module, and only then do you specialize. So when you start natural sciences as well, you can also move into just maths or computer science. It is again a much broader first year. So depending, if you're a scientist, depending on your tastes around what you would like to study, then that might influence you. If you're a biologist, you might be thinking, I absolutely do not want to do any physics, or vice versa, and that might mean that you look at Oxford instead of Cambridge. Obviously, there's more subtlety to it than that, but it is really worth looking at. Um, it is incredibly important that you do your research and that you know what you're applying for and that you know why you are applying for it. Because, of course, in your interview, that is going to be one of the things that they ask you. Why are you here? It is not. It wouldn't. It shouldn't be a surprise that you would need to say why you've applied for that course in particular. What is good about Oxford and Cambridge, though, is that the websites are amazing and there's loads of information on there about pretty much anything that you'd want to see. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples. So if we just grab this. Sorry, just be with you in a sec. So both the websites have really comprehensive guides on choosing what to study. They have a lot of they have a lot of video content. They have a lot of recommendations and suggestions for what to look at, and lots of links and to different subjects within that as well. They also guide students based on what their A level or equivalent subjects are, or what kind of, or if they're doing an EPQ, or they enjoy research, or how the courses are assessed. There's just lots and lots and lots of information out there. They are very, very good at giving and sharing information. And Cambridge is the same. Again, they've got lots of information about their courses, structure, all kinds of different things. So choosing a subject, if you're a student, how do you begin to choose a subject? There are so many available at both the universities, and it is really tempting, especially sitting in year 12 where students are now, to think, oh, I really like this subject. That is I'm fixed on history, I'm fixed on English, I'm fixed on biochemistry, whatever. And if you're truly passionate, then that is a good thing to do. But there is a real benefit to researching, because the acceptance rates for subjects are really, really varied. And that is worth looking at. If Oxbridge is your dream, if that is somewhere that you really want to go, have a look around at similar subjects to the ones that you're interested in. Just to give you a little snapshot here, this is from 2023, from this year. These are the subjects at the two universities that have the highest acceptance rates, so the highest application to acceptance, and these are the ones that have the lowest. Now, obviously, when you're looking at these, some of the ones here on the highest are really, really specialized, like music. You've got to have a lot of prior expertise and skill that very few people have in order to apply for music in the first place. So we have to take that into consideration. But you can see ones in here that might be a little bit of a surprise, like things like classics or theology have relatively high acceptance rates, certainly when compared to some of the subjects on this side. And at the bottom here, I've just put some of the subjects that I think the swap students really commonly apply for. And these are also some of the most popular subjects, not just at Oxbridge, but at university in general at the minute. And the acceptance rates there. So 9% for psychology. Psychology is currently the most popular degree subject in the UK, 13% at law, 11% at politics, philosophy, and economics. So, as you can see, it's really worth having a little investigate and a little bit of a research. Again, this is something that we talk to students about, and we give advice about similar subjects to the one that they might be looking at. That takes us on really nicely then to entry requirements, and they are what you would expect. They are very, very high. These are also the minimum requirements, which we have to bear in mind. They generally won't consider students or applications from students who don't have these grades. I have put in applications from students with slightly lower grades than this, but only when there have been quite significant extenuating circumstances. Otherwise, I would just recommend that a student didn't apply, because it would be a waste of a slot on their UCAS form. Oxbridge are also increasingly prescriptive about the A levels that they will consider, and they are really not flexible. They don't have to be. They have so many applicants. So, for example, if you want to do maths at Cambridge, you have to have done further maths. They don't have any exceptions, so please do check this. They do, however, accept BTECs for several courses, not medicine, but nearly every other course, but usually only alongside an A or an A star in an A level. And again, they can be quite prescriptive, unsurprisingly, about the BTECs that they will accept. What may be a surprise is that they don't have GCSE requirements. It's becoming more and more common for universities to start prescribing their GCSE requirements now. But Oxford don't do that, or they don't do it yet. They will expect at least a 6 in maths and English, however, if they are considering your application. Again, just like the pages that I showed you before, there have really extensive entry requirements that are all listed out really, really clearly, subject by subject on the website. That it's also listed if there are any sort of unusual entry requirements as well, or any exceptions. This slideshow will be on the LeSwap website under webinars, by the way, after I finish this evening. The recording will also be on YouTube. You can also email me if you want a copy of the slides. So all the links will be, of course, live in there, and you can look at the documents at your leisure. So we talked about what Oxbridge is, and about what kind of subjects they do, and how hard it is to get in, and what they what they need, what the entry requirements are. What is involved in the actual application itself then? So the UCAS form. The application form for Oxbridge is exactly the same as the as the UCAS form for anybody else, any other course, but the deadline is earlier, as we've already discussed. There will There's often a pre-interview assessment, not at every subject and not at every college, but many have a pre-interview assessment. They're usually done at school, and they are all free with the exception of law and medicine, which I'll talk about briefly next. You will assume, students should assume that they're going to need to attend an interview. There are very, very few students who get a place without being interviewed. It's not really worth considering. The interviews traditionally take place at the university, but they have been remote for the last few years, and are continuing to stay remote in a lot of cases. And some courses ask for examples of written work. This is arts and humanities subjects. So it's very, very common in English, history, classics, subjects like this. It's not assessed, but it is usually used in the interview. So the interviewers will ask students about the piece of work that they've chosen to submit. Again, so they vary in which subjects need a pre-assessment. It is worth looking at that early. So if you are thinking of doing history, check whether or not you're going to have to do a history test. Same for any subject. That might, again, this might influence people's choice about which subject they want to apply for. You aren't automatically entered into these registrations for these pre-assessments. You have to check it and you have to check how to register. It's usually by going to your school's exams officer and just telling them that you want to register. Again, the websites have really clear guidance as to how to do that. And either me or your student's head of year or the HE contact at school can also help them with that. The two exceptions to this, as I said, are law and medicine. Law students need to sit a test called an LNAT, which is separate to Oxford and Cambridge because more than several universities use it, and that does have a fee and it has to be booked via a website. And medicine applicants also have a separate test. This used to be a BMAT, but the BMAT isn't running anymore, so it's likely to be something called a UCAT. And again, that is done at a test centre, and you've got to pay for it. But this is all again things that students will be told about in plenty of time. Some colleges and subjects need pre-submitted written work handed in. Again, just check and see if that is a requirement. That should not be something that the applicant does, especially for this. It should never be done specially. It should always be something they've already done. So if if they've done a piece of coursework, NEA or something like that, then that is the best thing to be submitted. The best people to talk to about that are the subject teachers of the subject that's linked to the one they're applying for. For these assessments, there are tons of revision materials available online, loads of past papers, years and years worth, again, through the Oxford and Cambridge websites. And revision is essential because they are tough. They're meant to be tough. Like if you walk out of a pre-assessment and you think it was easy, then it's probably not gone well. They are meant to be hard, but they can be very time pressured, and they can, the texts that you're given can be quite tricky. So it is really worth being familiar with the style of the pre-assessments. This is also something we help students with in school in terms of accessing and working through pre-assessments. A brief note on interviews then, because interviews are kind of the last bit of the stage. So the applications go in October. Submitted work has to be sent end of October, beginning of November. My students have just sent it in the last couple of weeks. And the interviews then usually take place in the first 2 weeks of December of year 13. So my year 13s, all our year 13s at the Swap are now doing their mock interviews and their interview prep. It varies, like everything I said this evening, it does vary the type of interview, what they will ask you, all that kind of stuff. Cambridge do most of their interviews online now. 5 colleges are still interviewing in person this year, but the rest have gone online, and Oxford are entirely online. That might change next year. I have no idea. Students often have more than one interview, so they will have an interview schedule. They're on the Oxford website, linked to this page. There is actually a schedule of like a mock interview schedule that you can look at to see what the interviews will probably look at. Because you'll sometimes be interviewed by more than one college, especially at Oxford. You'll sometimes be interviewed by more than one academic. You can sometimes have a panel interview with more than one academic interviewing you. One thing that is pretty common is that you will usually be given some kind of prompt material or something to work through. So, for example, if you are interviewing for English, you might be given a poem or an extract of a piece of text, and you'll be told, you've got this has been you've got 20 minutes uh, or maybe probably not that long, a few minutes to read it and take it in, and then you'll be asked questions about that prompt material. You can also be asked about your written work, as I've said. You can be asked about your personal statements, and you can just be asked about why you picked the course and why you want to be there. There are, again, lots of resources. We support however we can with interviews. We know they're really intimidating, and it is something that students tend to be quite worried about. We work hard to get all of our applicants at least one mock interview, ideally more than one, so they have at least a test, a taster of what that interview process looks like. They are, despite lots of like nonsense that you read on the internet, like apocryphal stuff about like that they're all trick questions and weird. They're not trick questions and weird. They can require students to think in quite an unusual way. These universities are looking for really good thinkers, and we know that interviews can be challenging because it's an academic chat with a professor who is top of their field. That is an intimidating situation to walk into, so we do try and help with that however we can. What do they expect from their applicants then? They get lots and lots of them, and Oxford and Cambridge courses aren't huge, so they can't take everybody. What do they expect? They expect, of course, high grades, as we've discussed. They expect you to have the correct subjects when you apply. So not be applying for a degree in medicine if you don't have chemistry and biology A levels. They require extensive supercurricular reading and engagement. To be an Oxford student or a Cambridge student is not enough to be a brilliant student in the classroom. You have to be a brilliant student out of the classroom. And they will expect in your personal statements, in the interview, that to come through. They will expect you to talk about texts, for example, that you have read that are outside of the bounds of your course. They will expect to hear about university open days or workshops or masterclasses or summer schools that you've been to, lectures that you've attended. They are expecting an extensive knowledge. They expect you to have researched the course, and they expect you to have a genuine interest in that subject and to be able to explain why. They don't expect you to be an expert in the interview. They don't expect extensive interview experience. They also, interestingly, don't expect lots of extracurricular. It is good if you've got extracurricular, it can only help, but they don't need you to be, grade 8 piano and captain of the football team and, a volunteer at a food bank and go rock climbing. They're not looking for incredibly accomplished extracurricular. These are academic courses. They would rather have a student who is an excellent mathematician, if I'm honest, than someone who is applying for math, who is excellent in lots of extracurricular ways, because that's what's going to make them successful at university. They also don't expect you to go into that interview super polished. They do not want a script, and they're not expecting you to be at undergraduate level now. What they want to see is potential and passion. So a little bit more on the applications themselves. When you apply to Oxford or Cambridge, you don't just apply to Oxford or Cambridge. You apply to a specific college within Oxford or Cambridge. There are 30 odd colleges in each of the universities. Some of them are postgraduate only. Some of them are single sex college, but most of them are mixed undergraduate colleges. You can either apply to a specific college or you can make what's called an open application, and it's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to the student. There is, on the surface level, no advantage or disadvantage to either. All the course content's the same. The degree you get from one college is the same as the degree that you get from another college. There is no best college for any subject. The resources are the same. It's a bit like your base school. So the swap students will have a good idea of what the college system is like because we have a similar college system at the Swap. It's where where you live, where you have your meals, where your common room is, and there are also there are other kind of things specific to colleges, but the exams are the same, for example, regardless of the college that you are based in. So if you make a college application, you apply to that college. If you make an open application, then you will be allocated electronically to a college. If you make an open application, admissions tutors don't know that you've done that, so they can't be biased against people that haven't applied to their favorite college or whatever. We will do a lot more on this year. This is just a brief note on colleges. We'll look at them in loads and loads of detail with students. It is worth researching now and see if there are some that you like more than others. As I said at the top of the presentation, some of them are really old-fashioned and traditional. Some of them are hundreds and hundreds of years old. Some of them are really new and are only a few decades old. Some of them are Hogwartsian in what they look like. Some of them look really modern. The facilities are really different. Some are entirely catered, some are self-catering. It really will be down to the student as to what kind of accommodation they like, what kind of feel they like to their college. It I've said there, ignore websites that tell you how to play the system. That's because some colleges have more applications than others. The famous colleges and older colleges, things like Brasenose, Trinity, tend to have more applications than the newer, less well-known colleges, but both universities have systems for mitigating that. So there are websites and people that claim to be able to tell you how to play the system to be more likely to be accepted. But as I say, the universities do have pooling systems and things that attempt to stop that happening. Loads of things to look out for colleges. Where is it? Is it bit large, small? What's the accommodation like? The old colleges are beautiful, but sometimes the accommodation is not very accessible and quite old. So that might be something that students need to consider. They're pretty similar in price, but there are small differences in costs. The Oxford Student Union here has a really nice little page, which is a college suggester. So you put in things like, do I want to live in a big college, old college, small college, whatever, and they'll suggest where you should apply. And again, both the universities have really comprehensive lists of colleges, and each college has its own mini website as well, so you can do plenty of research there. One of the last things I want to talk about this evening are foundation courses. So both Oxford and Cambridge now offer what's called a foundation course to students who have lower grades than the A's and A stars. This is a 4-year course instead of a 3-year course. It has a foundation year as a year 0. If you pass that year, then you can either stay at Oxford or Cambridge and carry on into the degree that you want to do, or if you want to, you can cash that in, and if you don't like it, you can go to another university and start your undergraduate degree there. These are really, really good courses. They're not available in every subject, so have a look and make sure that the subject area that you're interested in is part of this. The entry grades are typically BBB-ish up to about AAB. If your grades are higher than AAB, you wouldn't be able to apply for a foundation course. You'd have to apply for the main course. Alongside that reduced entry fee, an entry requirement, a really amazing thing about these courses is that for that first year only, there are no tuition fees. Your accommodation is free, your food is free, they pay your travel, and they give you a bursary, a scholarship bursary to help with your living costs. These are widening participation courses. They are aimed at students who wouldn't normally consider going to Oxford or Cambridge. So they do everything they can to help students who might not normally go to access Oxford and Cambridge. Because of this, there are only 50 places available at each uni, and there are quite strict application and entry criteria for applying for these courses, usually around things like either of your if you're the student applying, either of your parents not being to university, or your household income being capped at a certain amount, or your postcode being in a certain area. But there are lots of information on those websites, and we're hoping to have Oxford Astrophoria in to talk to our students this year. One thing to recommend, really strongly recommend, is that anyone considering Oxford or Cambridge joins a summer school or an Oxbridge mentoring program. These are run by colleges. They are also Oxford Launchpad, sorry, is run by state school students at Oxford and Cambridge. So sometimes they're run by students, a lot of time they're run by colleges. They are brilliant. There are some examples here from last year. Some of them haven't reopened yet for 2024, but they're the kind of thing to sign up for and keep an eye on. Uh, Cambridge does lots of its summer schools through the Sutton Trust. Oxford does a really brilliant one called Unique. And there's the Launchpad and, as I say, other bits and bobs and things like the Cambridge Law Conference, which is specific to students who are considering law. I run webinars through the year that will be featured in the Family Bulletin, the SWAT Bulletin, and in the aspirational team. If students or if your children are not yet members of the SWAP aspirational team, if you drop me an email, I will add them. One thing to remember and beware of, please, is please be aware of summer schools or prep programs that have Oxford or Cambridge names stuck on them that cost sometimes thousands of pounds. Genuine widening participation summer schools, genuine mentoring programs that are associated with the universities are either free or have a small cost. They certainly don't cost thousands of pounds like some of these do. You will, if you put Oxford Summer School into Google, I guarantee the first like few hits you will get are week-long summer schools that are like 5 grand. They are, I'm not saying they're no good, they might be, but they're extremely expensive and they tend to be aimed at international students, not British students at British schools. If you see anything like that and you're wondering if it's any good, send it over to me. I'll tell you if it's any good, or I'll tell you if it's worth the cost at least. So, last thing, what should your children, what should students do now? Get on the Oxford and Cambridge websites, get on their socials, sign up for alerts and the subjects they're interested in. Sign up for summer schools, Unique and Cambridge Sutton Trust. So when they come out, then students will be notified of them. They will also be in the aspirational team and in the bulletins. Students, you need to make sure you're working towards those A and A star grades. Talk to your teachers now and say that you want to apply for Oxford or Cambridge. Ask them what to do to get your grades up. Don't start in May or June. It's too late. Start now. Start a supercurricular portfolio. This can just be a log of supercurricular stuff you've done. I went to a lecture, I read an article, I went to a workshop. Keep it, date it, because when you write your personal statement in the summer, you'll forget half the stuff that you've done. So keep a portfolio of everything. Join the aspirational team, as I've said, research your courses. Please make sure that you read the SWAT bulletin or your school's bulletins and take up opportunities. Please read it with your children and help them. Um, it doesn't have to be just opportunities at Oxbridge, opportunities at any university, conferences, workshops, masterclasses, summer schools at other universities are really, really valuable and will be valued by Oxford and Cambridge because it shows that you've engaged with that wider supercurricular curriculum. Go to tutorial and personal development sessions. And as I said, visit as soon as you can. Get a feel for what it's really like wherever you can. Okay, so I'm just going to pop my email in the chat. A second for everyone. There we go. So as I said, my name's Miss Piercy, Laura Piercy, but my email is still my old name, which is lstanley@acklandburley.camden.sch.uk. I'm just going to take a sec to have a little drink. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, if you are happy, then please enjoy the rest of your evening. And if you do want copies of these slides, then as I say, drop me an email or wait for them to pop up on the LSWAP website. So I'm just going to pop my mic off while Right. Okay, let me have a look. Thank you. Lovely. So, first question is there a college which is particularly Burley friendly? So, there are colleges that take a greater proportion of state school students than other colleges because Oxford and Cambridge have to publish this information. They have they do a big statistical report every year where they have to publish and say where students sort of come from or where they go to. So there are some colleges that are more or seemingly more state school friendly. So just to give you a little example here, so Trinity College at Cambridge in 2023 had nearly 1,400 applications and accepted 260 students. Wadham at Oxford had 600 applications, accepted 96. Girton had 646, accepted 184. You can go on their website and find out all that information. And there are some colleges have a good reputation for taking more students from state schools. So Oxford, Hertford, and Mansfield are the colleges that take the most state school students by percentage. And at Cambridge, it's Girton and Selwyn. At Oxford, the two that take the least state school students by percentage are Trinity and Queen's, and at Cambridge, it's St John's and Gonville. Um, One thing it's worth looking at is that about, well, 68% of Oxbridge's intake roughly is from state schools, which doesn't sound too bad on the surface. 32% from private schools, 68% from state schools, but only 7% of students in the UK go to private schools. So they take over 30% of their intake from 7% of students. So it is still weighted against state school pupils, unfortunately. So it's you can't game the system, but as I say, there are some colleges that because they take more state school students, they perhaps have staff who are more familiar with state school students, are more used to interviewing state school students, and so they might be colleges to be worth looking at. But saying that, if you go to Cambridge and you fall in love with Gonville, then please apply there. Like the amount of difference it could make really could be quite minor, and it's much better to apply for somewhere that you love. How much do pre-entry exams for medicine or law typically cost? So the UCAT is about £80. The BMAT used to be a little bit less than that. The LNAT is, I think it's a bit cheaper. Oh no, I'm sorry. I've just had to look at it up because I wasn't quite sure. The LNAT is £75. So you're looking at 70, 80 quid for your medicine or law pre-assessments. If you receive bursary, then you can get some help towards that. If that is the case, if you or your child receives bursary but you want to apply for medicine or law, please do speak to your head of year or to me or the equivalent me at your child's base school, because there are ways of either claiming back money or getting part of your fee paid for you. What are entry requirements for students who are doing or thinking of 4A levels? It doesn't make any difference. So uh, they're not really bothered about the fourth A level, if I'm completely honest with you. They would much rather you have 3A stars than 4As. They're only really looking at three primary A levels. The fourth A level, I'm not saying it doesn't count, it does, but it counts more as this is a really dedicated student. This is a student who, who works really hard. In terms of grey entry requirements, it won't make any difference. They don't reduce the entry requirements if you're doing more A levels. Uh, yes, if you'd like the slideshow, please drop me an email. I'll send it over to you probably tomorrow. Are there particular A-level subjects that they look for in law? Yes, there are. If you go on the website, the entry requirements, it will tell you. So let me just grab, I think the Cambridge one is a little bit, no, the Oxford one is a bit clearer. And I'll just tell you. I've had a student apply for law at Cambridge this year, not at Oxford. Law. So the entry requirements are at 3 A's, and it's any subject involving essay writing is the is the is the offer there. So quite a broad set of entry requirements. Is it a disadvantage if a student is doing art as one of their A levels if they want to do English? Absolutely not, as long as they're still doing English. Not at all. It as long as they're still doing the subjects that meet the entry requirements, then it shouldn't disadvantage them whatsoever. Um, if you apply to a specific college, are you only considered for there, or is it a first choice? It's a first choice, yeah. So Cambridge and Oxford do it slightly differently. Cambridge have a pooling system where they kind of they take like a first choice of it. Sorry, let me just let me just get my brain in gear. So they allocate students to colleges, and then if that college is full, but you're still a brilliant student, they won't just say, "Oh no, that college is full, off you go." They will allocate you to another college that isn't as full, so they can move you. About a third of students end up in a college that they don't apply for. So if when you put down a college, you should be thinking this is where I would like to go, but be prepared to accept an offer from any college. And again, if you make an open application, obviously you will just be allocated to a college. If you make an open application, you're of course less likely to be allocated to a really, really famous and really oversubscribed college. That is part of the nature of it. But you can technically be allocated anywhere. Lovely. That's the end of my questions. If anyone else has one, please you can ask now. Or if it's a question that's really specific or about your child or your circumstances in particular, again, please feel free to put that in an email for me. And uh, that's it from me for this evening. Oh, last question. Sorry. Does taking an EPQ give an advantage? Not in terms of entry requirements, but it will potentially give you advantage in an interview. It will give you an advantage at perhaps getting an interview because universities really do like EPQs. Some universities drop their entry requirements for them, but not Oxford or Cambridge. It gives you something really good to talk about in your interview, though. Again, I've got of my students going this year, applying this year, a couple of them are doing EPQs, and it is a really good sort of talking point, especially if your EPQ is linked to what you want to do. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your attention on a very cold and miserable evening. Have a lovely night, and I'm sure I will see you again at another one of these webinars in the new year. Bye.